Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to No More News. Thank you all for joining me for a great show, great guest today, Thursday, January 9th, 2025. Going to be discussing the Zionist technocracy golden age that we're likely to see unfold. Joining me, return to the show. We had a great talk last time. It's been a while. A OG legend in independent alternative media. He's got a new special out. New documentary special out. He just did called Pyramid of Power that he interviewed me in. I want to ask him about that. He's at the Conscious Resistance. He's got a new media alliance. He's always done great work, from huge interviews to analysis to activism. Derrick Broze, my bro, Mr. Derrick Broze. What's up, Derrick?
Hey, man. Thanks for having me back on.
Of course. Well, honestly, really what did it was your post that you did the other day here. Oh, shoot. Hold on. I got music playing again. All right. And boom. There you are. So I saw you this post you did the other day, the Conscious Resistance, Trump 2.0, the technocrats are in control, and I watched the clip, and you were spitting fire and viewing the Trump administration coming in a lot how I see it. What do you think, man? What's the Zionist technocratic Trump administration going to look like?
Apparently, it's going to look like the North American Union or something like that, right? Yeah, it's been a wild time the last week or so to watch people bending over backwards, and the guy hasn't even gotten to office, trying to make excuses for a number of different things that I know we're going to go over today, but not really surprising to me, unfortunately. I mean, maybe I think there's a little bit of it's not surprise, but at sometimes I'm just kind of, I guess, taken back that so many people seem to have bought into this next level of deception. I mean, you've been around doing this long enough to see a couple of deceptions, not only in terms of like presidents and people falling for, celebrity of Obama or whoever else, but after a while, it seems so obvious that you start to feel like there's no way people are going to fall for the same trap again. And the ruling class, they seem to be really just, the things that they're rebranding, the North American Union, for example, everything Trump's been talking about, all that stuff, it really just blowing my mind to see how easily now they are selling it to people. And it's funny because, I guess that's what, in an ironic twist, that's what the Abrahamic religions teach, right? That there's going to be this Antichrist that's going to come fool everybody and this and that, not saying Trump or Musk or the Antichrist, something like that, but in general, this idea that the people will be deceived by forked-tongued people, and yet they still can't see it.
Yeah. The Christian end times is there's going to be a great deception that falls for the beast system in the Antichrist. And since you mentioned the North American Union, we might as well start there. Like, as soon as I saw Trump pushing for Canada, which, by the way, was never during his campaign, there was nothing about we're going to take Canada and Greenland and rename Mexico. Those are all just like new emperor moves Trump's announcing and working on before he even gets into office. And so as soon as I saw that, and I saw Alex Jones, back in Elon and Trump, no matter what they do, I'm like, dude, Alex Jones's documentary Endgame, Blueprint for Global Enslavement, is where I learned about North American Union and Transatlantic Highway and NAFTA and this. I'm seeing people connect it like this is one of the 10 beast kingdoms, or this is fulfilling Ben-Gurion's plan to have a federated union of continents and this type of stuff. What's your take on the Canada Greenland stuff?
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about really the religious component as far as the remapping of the world, but
there's another one too. The biggest thing, hold on, about Blueprint for Global Enslavement. He frames it as in ancient Rome, all roads lead to Rome. So he was totally connecting ancient Rome, which is Edom in end times Jewish prophecy, to America and this new American continent, like emperor imperialism that Trump's about to get into.
Yeah, I mean, that's been a fascinating one for sure. And again, like, not that this is the first time anybody's been paying attention, is questioning of what Alex Jones is saying, but again, just to the level of how obvious and out in the open it is, like, oh my God, this guy is literally pitching the exact same thing that 20 years ago he's doing documentaries. And like you, I watched Endgame in 2009, found it randomly at a bookstore and took it home, and yeah, I mean, it blew my mind. And to now see him, Jones and other people in the MAGA movement literally promoting the exact same thing. And not only that, I mean, Jones specifically in that documentary, besides the North American Union and all that, he was specifically saying there's going to be a scientific and technological elite that will try to rule things. And here he is, like, praising Elon. But in terms of the whole, like, let's purchase Greenland, let's take the Panama Canal, let's rename the Gulf, all this silly stuff. Like, on one level, for me, as a voluntarist, as an anarchist, it kind of just, it's stupid. It's like, who the hell cares what they call that body of water, right? It's just like, this is just some ego, whatever stuff. But at the same time, then to see the people, like, Trump just says some silly comments out in the media, and it feels like maybe they're testing the waters a little bit. Like you said, this was not part of his campaign in any way. This wasn't like a campaign promise, we're going to expand America. But they put it out there, and sure enough, all these various so-called influencers, really, I think they're the real grifters, and this network of narrative pushing in the MAGA movement, like all these accounts with millions of followers that are now posting it and saying, like, yeah, this is like, it's a positive thing, it's going to make America better. I don't see how any way expanding the American Zionist empire is going to be good for anybody.
I know.
Other than Elon Musk and Donald Trump, like Greenland, obviously people are starting to pay attention to the fact that Greenland's rich in a lot of the minerals that Elon needs for his, lithium batteries for the Teslas and all the rest of it. So there's that. There's also, like, I shared around, I seen some people sharing the North American Technate from the Technocracy movement, which is, something I explore a lot in my work. And the map of the North American Technate was pretty much what we now call the North American Union, and very close to what Trump is talking about, including Greenland and Canada and the US and Mexico as one place. And then there's also some maps from the 70s that I've seen people sharing about from the Club of Rome and some of their white papers, where they also similarly carved up the world in such a way. So I don't see
didn't Elon's didn't Elon's dad have something that he was involved with that showed the whole American continent in a technocracy?
Yeah, so for anybody that is in my book, for anybody who's not familiar with my book, it's called How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State. There you go. And you can download it for free at theconsciousresistance.com/how-to. It's more of like what are the solutions, but it's also a little bit of history of technocracy. And Elon Musk's his grandfather, Joshua Schuldman, I think, I can't remember his last name off the top of my head, but his grandfather was part of the technocracy movement in Canada in the 1920s and 30s, which is really when Technocracy Inc. and some of these the Technical Alliance and some of these other groups really had their big moment as they were promoting this alleged utopia where we would get rid of politicians, get rid of the capitalists, and instead you would have the machines run by the Technate King.
Yeah, Elon's robots that Alex Jones is.
Yeah. And they also even discussed back then energy credits, that this whole society, like the way you would make things equal is that the machine would micromanage, centrally plan all of society, and you would give out energy credits for people to use to redeem food and money, food and things like that. So his grandfather was directly involved in that movement back then. And that's one thing I've tried to point to people for years. And they, it doesn't necessarily mean just because your grandpa did something, you're going to do it. But look at his life. Look at what he's surrounding himself. I think he's continuing those trends.
How weird the thing about, like, there's a guy that's going to Mars named Elon in some old book, too, that his dad could have been reading or associated with. What the hell is that shit?
That's a weird one, man. Like, so I'll tell you this first, that you know the author Jim Marrs? He's deceased.
Yeah, I remember him. Fourth Reich and exactly. CIA killed Kennedy.
Rise of the Fourth Reich and stuff. Yeah. So I interviewed Jim before he died, and I would, always picking his brain about all kinds of conspiracies. And he was an old school dude who actually had file cabinets and stuff. So he told me he had a file in his cabinet called the file. And this was just like where weird, unexplained shit would go. Not, he's like, I don't know what it means, but it's there. I would place this story in that file. And that's basically that So the Nazi Werner von Braun, who we know came over to the U.S. from Operation Paperclip and helped with NASA and rockets and all that stuff, he wrote a book, I think it came out in the 50s, called The Mission to Mars. And in that book, The Mission to Mars, about this colony on Mars, the leader of the colony's name was Elon. It wasn't like a first name, it was more like a title. So you'd be like Elon Adam, you know, whatever. But the point is, like, still, that was a title of somebody in this fictional book written by a Nazi scientist, and the title of the leader of that colony was Elon. And that's, again, like, I don't know what the hell that means, but it sure is weird.
It was written before Elon was born, I suppose.
I think so, because I don't know how old I don't think he's over 70. Yeah, he's like 60, 50, something like that. So I would think it was written, before he was born.
Wow. So, like, his dad's a technocrat, has this agenda for the American continent. He's read that book, and now Elon's like groomed his whole life to play this going to Mars, which is a farce, right? He's not getting to Mars. Give me a break. They'll never get people on Mars in his lifetime. It's a pipe dream. I think it's just more of getting people something to believe in, like, because that's one of the things I see online, like from more like normie people. Like, if you just ask them what do they think about Elon, besides people who just hate him because he's rich, generally what I'll hear from people is like, oh, he's got big ideas, he's trying to take us back to space and go to Mars. And so, like, it gives them something to be inspired by. Also, I think it was not a mistake in any fashion. It was complete propaganda and meant to plant this seed in people's mind to have Elon Musk appear in the Iron Man movie, literally as, like, he's himself. He's there with this fictional billionaire, Tony Stark, who builds machines to save the planet and fight all the bad guys. I think that was purposeful, to try to plant that seed in people's minds. Like, Elon is our Tony Stark. He's here to save us. He's got all the cool technology. He's the cool billionaire. He plays video games and he shares memes. Yeah, and it's like, does Elon just try to be like Iron Man? Or were we primed for Elon with this Iron Man character? Like, it almost makes you wonder. I mean, look at Elon. He's super, super close with Netanyahu. He's going and hanging out with the rabbis in Auschwitz. He's tight with Ben Shapiro. Trump, who's always been, surrounded by Zionists, Christian Zionists, and Likudniks and Jared Kushner. And he's got Space Force, Trump's Space Force, SpaceX, Starlink, secret shit, the Everything app, the self-driving cars, the human robots, and Neuralink, and Alex Jones is his biggest hype man. How crazy is that? Isn't it been great to see David Icke call out all these guys? Isn't it been wild to see?
I'm glad David is as consistent as he is, and it's always disappointing, I think, when anybody who people may have thought had some common sense lose their minds. Alex Jones, like I said earlier, has been questionable for some time. Like, I've been questioning him since even before Trump's administration, and I was on InfoWars back like 2012, 13, 3 times, and then once I started being critical of Trump when he came onto the scene, I was never invited back. I also think, I was thinking about this yesterday. You have to look at the track record of InfoWars, and Alex Jones obviously is the head, but Aaron and Melissa Dykes left, Kurt Nimmo left, David Knight left. I heard Greg Reese just quit as well. And so there's,
Harrison Smith too. Harrison Smith just deactivated his account yesterday.
I saw that.
And missed his morning show. And the last thing he shared was Greg Reese, who just left InfoWars because he disagrees so much with Alex.
So he might be leaving too. So then that's my point is, like, for one, 2 things. You have to question the credibility and the principles of anybody who's still there, because there are people like Rob Dew who've been there since like the early 2000s, one of the earliest people. And it's like, okay, if all these people who clearly have a problem with the direction things are going have left because they have some, a little bit of spine and principles, and the people who stayed, I think those are questionable people. But for sure, I mean, that doesn't look good when you have somebody who people are just like, I can't be around anymore. This is too far. And maybe for some people, they stick around a little bit longer, but eventually it's too much. We've seen that happen with a lot of people in the InfoWars crew who probably, like most people, were woken up by Alex Jones, have like this really starry-eyed view of him and think they're going to go work for him and like it's going to be great. And the closer they get, they realize like, holy shit, this guy is not what he claims to be. And so it has been pretty disturbing to watch that, but I'm glad that Ike, is calling it out, because as I said earlier, it definitely seems like there's so many accounts being boosted that are just kissing Elon and Trump's ass, and that those are the people that are going to be boosted. And obviously, lot of action and movement and attention is going to Twitter and to X, but I still think most people, and maybe this applies to all social media, but I think that most people on Twitter and X, especially those who are building, like reaching millions, not to underestimate those numbers, but I think people do a little bit overplay their hand of how much the rest of the world even gives a shit. Like most of the world is not paying attention to what's going on Twitter. They're just like trying to live their daily lives. Not to say that doesn't matter and none of the views we get there are, totally unimportant. But I do think sometimes we just overplay our hand.
Give what happens on Twitter way too more importance.
Exactly.
People are like, we're winning. Look, we're ratioed Elon. Like, you guys are not winning. Look at the new cabinet coming in. Look at what's happening in the world. It's like Alex Jones and all these anti-New World Order people are now basically done an about face and ushering in the New World Order with Trump and Elon. And they're like, oh, the satanic beast system, the one world system, the Antichrist. Like, that's what Alex Jones has said for 20 years. And now he's helping Trump, like with the rabbi Third Temple fanatics and the red heifers and all the end times Christian Zionist prophets and all that, and John Hagee and all of this shit. It's wild.
It is wild, man. In that there's 1 to 2 degrees of separation between everybody in the incoming cabinet to Peter Thiel. I mean, and that's of course Peter Thiel and Palantir, and they've been working with the Israeli government for a number of years. And when you really just look at that through that lens, and it's not like anybody who was paying attention should be surprised. I mean, I know I was shouting from the rooftops, David Icke, you, plenty of other people who wanted to listen and actually were open-minded and not, in a cult, were able to see things for what they were. I mean, the election was funded by Zionists on both sides and steering committee members of the Bilderberg Group on both sides, so they won either way. Trump, as you know, took $100 million, at least we know publicly, from Miriam Adelson. And, that's just one piece of the pie, not to mention, of course, Musk putting, I think in the end, it ended up being like 75 million or something more that he put in personally. And then, of course, Peter Thiel through J.D. Vance, Howard Lutnick, who's going to be Trump's commerce secretary. He's got connections to Thiel, all of them going back to the PayPal mafia. And I mean, the PayPal mafia, they said their original goal with the PayPal itself before things like Bitcoin came along, which I think they've successfully hijacked, was to create a new world currency. I mean, and these are the people that Trump has all up in his incoming cabinet, and everybody that is there is connected to the same shady people as the other side, and that the same shady people as the previous administration. So there's no major fundamental change that's coming in. But one of the things I've noticed, that maybe you've seen this, is it seems like people are willing to make excuses if they think their gas is going to be cheaper, or if they think food's going to be, a little more affordable. It's like people. It's
just a little bit better than the left in anything, and then they go, that's exactly. Like their only option.
As long as it's like slightly less crappy than the other side, because this is the other thing. Is like, well, it would have been so much worse with Kamala, which I think is kind of. It's stupid to even bring up because we'll never know, for one, but also I don't necessarily think that's true. Probably there would be more resistance if they decided to go the route of putting Kamala Harris in office. And I say they in terms of the people who are really manipulating the elections and deciding who becomes president. And I think it's clearly a much better chess move to put Trump in and have all the people in his cult and the people who want to believe that something good is happening make excuses for him, as opposed to having Kamala there, where nobody was, surprised. Nobody was going to believe that was a real movement, and all the people on the right wing, the conservatives, if any of the shit Trump is doing now or talking about doing, if Kamala Harris was discussing that, they would be losing their minds. And I think that was done on purpose.
Totally. Trump's the right spokesman. He's the right leader. He's nobody else on the right could get America, but Trump can get America on board with destroying Gaza or war with Iran and possibly Russia, or expanding to Greenland and doing all these big things. What do you think about Elon buying X and like the explosion of a lot of low IQ and mostly Christian anti-Semitism? Like the grifter accounts you were talking about, they all popped up after October 7th. Elon buys Twitter, and that's exploding. Does that not feel like a total pretext for like a rug pull and a huge crackdown?
Absolutely. I think that's definitely part of what's going on. I mean, the whole overall, like on a broader view, just the entire "we are the new media," X is the free speech is total op. I mean, as I said earlier, I mean, there's definitely some, I would point to although her and I have had our own issues, she does great research on this area. Polly, Fringe Views on Twitter, she has done some great work looking into groups like the Wellness Company. And you start looking at the Wellness Company and how many podcasts are that Trump supporting podcasts are being funded or sponsored by the Wellness Company. You've got like Vigilant Fox, who I've interacted with directly and who used to boost my work before he became completely pro-Trump. And there's just this web of different accounts that are all backed by the same companies. Even just, for example, last week, this whole big thing was that podcast, which I had never heard of until it, was being shown to me everywhere I went, with Sean Ryan and, this CIA analyst and blah, blah. All these people are either current or allegedly former intelligence, and seeing stories like that promoted everywhere. And I looked into him a little bit. Well, he's like sponsored with or partnered with Eric Prince, formerly of Blackwater, his alleged privacy phone, which I don't think anybody should go anywhere near.
Which is also commercials run before Rumble videos for that.
I've seen that, as well. So, because that's the thing is Peter Thiel funds Rumble as well. When I wrote an article a few months ago for the Last American Vagabond called the co-opting of Bitcoin, and it was about Rumble. It was about some of these intersections, because I went to the Bitcoin Nashville conference over the summer last year when Trump was there to like beg for votes with the Bitcoin community, and Russell Brand was there, the head of Rumble was there, Howard Lutnick, who again is now Commerce Secretary.
He took Rumble public, by the way, too. You know that, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so he was all up in the Peter Thiel, Howard Lutnick, like that whole group. I could already see like this is the people that are infiltrating not only the Bitcoin space but the libertarian community. They got all the LP to go MAGA, and so many other elements. And a big part of that does tie into Rumble, into this, this we are the new media conservative movement. I absolutely do think that there's people who are, there's probably a spectrum. There's probably people who are just taking ad money, and so that's causing them to maybe question less because they don't want to piss off the people they're working with who have pro-Trump views. And there's probably others who are taking money directly to boost narratives and stories. And there's probably some who I think we can confidently say, I can't say who, but I think we'd be stupid not to think, that do work directly for the intelligence communities and are boosting certain narratives, whether that's pro-Trump, anti-Trump at will. And at the moment, it's a pro-Trump, don't question anything, pro-Elon. And yeah, like you said, there's some kind of Christian angles tied in there. And I do think it's about being a rug pull. They got so many people to jump on board, and I have a blue check. I don't pay Elon anything. I don't want their money, and I'm not taking any money or giving them money. They just did it for my account. But a lot of people paid money, invested in this platform, just regular people who are like, yeah, Elon, free speech, so I'm going to come join and sign up and pay for a premium account and all this kind of stuff. And they're feeding it data through the Grok AI and all, there's so many elements, not to mention the Israeli companies tied to ID verification. And like you said, the Everything app. So because of pushback, didn't he not do that Authentics Israeli one and switch to Stripe, which I think also has some shady connections as well? And has banned lots of people. Stripe. He funds almost everything. Peter Thiel is Stripe. Is that what you said? I'm pretty sure he's involved in Stripe, but also as far as the Israeli company, last I checked, which is I think a few days ago, I couldn't see anything that ever proved that he did stop working with them. So I saw some people claiming, and maybe even people. I didn't monetize because of that. Yeah, I wouldn't do that. Anything, and if you understand, again, his bigger picture, which they want you to get on this one app to rule them all. He's said it publicly. He wants it to be the WeChat of the West and all this sort of stuff. It's about get everybody to do a rush over here. Facebook's bad, YouTube's bad, all that other stuff. But let's run over here and give Elon your money, your data, which is what they want, and your time and attention. And then now that they got people on there, of course, now he's kind of rolling back. Well, no, not exactly free speech. And no, we only want to post positive things, and telling, verified users to only let other verified users respond to each other. And so there seems like some people are starting to question it, but it's funny that they're not really questioning the Zionism. They're not really questioning the technocracy. They're just like, oh, Elon's censoring some people, so now he's bad, when it should have been obvious from the get-go that he wasn't what he was claiming.
Nope, we were only shouting from the rooftops the whole time, and it's going to be a whole lot of I told you so in the next term, I think. Did you see this? The cosmetic billionaire Ronald Lauder of the World Jewish Congress behind Trump's obsession with buying Greenland, from The Independent. That's apparently where Trump got the idea.
I'll have to look into that one. What is his cosmetics into his business is dependent on some of their minerals too? Or
seals, baby seal blubber, apparently.
Wow.
But also, like you said in the post, I said, "What is Israel?" I tweeted my most popular tweet of all time, a stupid joke. I said, tongue in cheek tweet. What does Israel want with Greenland, or what does Israel want Greenland for? And I think you responded and said minerals and gas or something like that, which I'm sure it is. Also, they're saying for war with China and Russia to have a large presence up there in the Arctic Circle. Just so Trump can rename it Trumplandia or something?
I wouldn't be surprised about all the above. Yeah, I've seen that about the Arctic pipelines and having access to that land. This is the first time I was seeing that about the cosmetics angle too. But I mean, as is usual with these, I mean, for one, like on one level, right, it's just Trump saying stupid shit and he just does this. And I'm already like, oh my God, we got to be used to the media reporting on every dumb thing Trump does now for over the next 4 years and his people cheering it along, so maybe it'll end up being nothing. It's just Trump kind of trying to boast and say, oh, I'm so big, I'm going to get the Greenland. But honestly, at the same time, I would not be surprised if it somehow happens and they are able to make it happen and that his people celebrate it. See, he's such a great negotiator, the art of the deal. He made it.
He's going to be like the Magic Man. He's going to negotiate peace with Putin in Ukraine too, I bet. And all the focus will come on the Middle East. I do think so. What do you think is going to happen with?
I think that there's a big chance that he is able to negotiate peace deals. And in fact, like, you've probably seen the clips just in the last week where he's like standing there in Mar-a-Lago and his Middle East envoy or whatever is like, we're going to negotiate a deal. And he's like, there better be a deal before I get into office or there's going to be hell to pay. And so it wouldn't surprise me if the move is to really let him, quote unquote, bring peace for a period of time and just get so many people falling behind Trump, even people who, again, more people who we think should have better common sense falling for it and saying, I don't know, man, look, maybe he is really the good guy. Maybe he really is fighting the deep state. I think I've been calling it for the last year, the great inversion, which is funny because it was kind of ironic to share this with you because it comes from, I first heard it from a Christian, this chick named, Alexandria, I can't remember. She has like a small Substack, but she does a lot of great research and she's a Christian, like hardcore Christ follower, but she sees through Trump and the Q and all this kind of stuff. And anyways, the idea of the greater inversion just being that, again, there's like people believe we're going from darkness, let's say the Democrats, the progressives, the radical left, to light, Trump in the MAGA, the Q, the Great Awakening, et cetera, when in reality, these things are kind of on the same false binary, the same polarity. And so from the Christian perspective, like she's like, you got to rise above it and, follow Christ or whatever. But I took the idea, kind of taking it out of religious context, that to me, I think that is what's happening, though. This is a great inversion. They're inverting things. So people think that this is a win, Maha, et cetera. We're finally taking back, defeating the deep state, but it's going to be more of the same. And I think that's sort of where I'm holding on to it. I think if you really do think critically and not be swayed emotionally, and there's going to be a lot of stuff coming. I mean, none of us know what's going to happen on day one in just a couple of weeks. I'll be in DC at the inauguration, and it'll be interesting to see what happens immediately after.
Who you hanging out with there? You going with anybody there?
I'm going with just a friend of mine who's an activist who's going to be there promoting the whole Free Ross effort, because that's one.
He's going to help film for you. He's going to film you, maybe.
He's going to film. We're going to try to do some man on the street interviews and just document. I am going to definitely try to get some critical interviews of Trump supporters, asking them what they think about Peter Thiel and technocracy and some of these points. So we'll see if there's anybody there with some critical thinking left, or if they're all there just to cheer God Emperor Trump.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned like the QAnon is very messianic, and it has Trump as the cult-like messianic figure, and the dark to light is a Kabbalistic Judaism, mystical Judaism concept, and Trump and the Christians kind of are in an inversion of Judaism. It's the Esau-Jacob dialectic in Judaism that they have between Christianity and Judaism. So I do agree with that, but I think that's part of the blueprint and the script that's like being followed, essentially. I wanted to ask, what do you think? You mentioned Gaza, Trump threatening Gaza. He's going to, destroy them if the hostages aren't back. Like, we're talking 11 days. I don't think they're just going to hand over all the hostages. What do you think Trump's going to do? He's going to drop the hammer on them and show he's not messing around?
I don't think so I think that part is probably just him like trying to play strong, because what he specifically said, I went back and listened to the clip, and he said, if they don't, before I get in office, there's going to be hell to pay, and it's going to be bad, not only for everybody in that region, but for everyone. So it's like, I don't know, what is he going to drop nuclear bombs? Or he's clearly not going to do that. I think that he's just talking strong. I mean, there's also the whole kind of geopolitics of Netanyahu, and that he's increasingly unpopular in his own country. And a lot of people believe that one of the reasons, besides just the fact that they are, murderers, that they want to drag out the conflict over there, is because he doesn't want to let go of power. And so as long as there's a conflict going on, he can sort of justify him staying in this position of power. But we know that Trump and Netanyahu are buddies. So, I mean, I think that it's just TV show. They know that Trump can say whatever he wants on camera to make himself look strong for his MAGA fans. But in reality, just like this morning, him and Obama are sitting at Jimmy Carter's funeral, laughing and chucking it up.
I wonder what Trump was saying to him to make Obama laugh like that. Everybody's trying to read the lips or caption it. What do you think he was saying to him?
I saw somebody, one of those accounts we're talking about, these right-wing Trump boosters, sharing that the New York Post reported a lip reader says Obama and Trump were saying something about let's go to a quiet place to talk or something. But what we could see visibly is Obama was laughing like this is an old friend of his or something, right? And that's not the sort of, it's funny because that's not the scene that they've played to us beforehand, when usually, Trump and Obama, if they interacted, which will only be a few times publicly, it's very, tight, and they're not smiling and just whatever. And people are like, oh yeah, it's because Trump hates Obama and this and that. But now it's like they're old buddies. They're just hanging out, making jokes, smiling, laughing. I think that is a more accurate view of what these people really are, is that they are buddy and friends. And probably at this point, they're like, look, I won. We don't have to play anymore. I'm going to be the next president. We don't have to pretend like we hate each other.
Biden did the same thing.
Yeah.
He's probably talking about how stupid everybody is. He's like, I told him. It's probably something like that. It could be nothing, too. It could be something totally random and benign, but it could be something. Now, they wouldn't be saying anything crazy with everybody all around them like that. So it's probably just, schmoozing.
Yeah, I think it's just them. Maybe people probably shouldn't read too much into it, other than the fact that, again, they're clearly not, they don't hate each other. They're sitting there getting along right there. And I'm sure when Trump reportedly had his meeting with Biden after he allegedly won the election, that they were hanging out, and either Biden or whoever's pulling his strings, that they were sitting around just laughing and, patting each other on the back. I doubt it was like this intense meeting where Trump is, demanding do this and do that, and Biden's trying to resist him. I'm sure they were just hanging out like old buddies.
Yeah. So you're doing this new Independent Media Alliance. Is that what it's called? Independent Media Alliance, or what's the official name?
Yeah, it's just the Independent Media Alliance. We just kept it as simple as possible.
Right. And it's like T-Lav, Last American Vagabond, and Whitney, and Slow News Days, and a few other people. Oh man, I forgot where I was going to go with the second part of that question. Just tell us about that a little bit. It'll come back to me.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is a new project that really hasn't even gotten off the ground yet. This is going to be the year where we really can do something with it. But last summer, myself, Whitney, and Ryan of T-Lav were just chatting among ourselves and starting to notice what we're talking about here, Adam, that there's these new narrative boosting networks that we're seeing different accounts push different messages. And this was, again, last summer. So Trump went to the LNC, the Libertarian Party, says, I'm going to free Ross, I'm going to put a Libertarian cabinet. So all those people start falling for it. Then over the summer, he goes to some crypto conferences, starts promising the Bitcoin community he's going to save the world for them. And we could just start seeing how there was a need for trying to bring together the voices of people who are still sane and trying to just have closer collaboration at the heart of it. I mean, our original idea was let's bring together people who have been consistent. We stuck with three main issues, which were COVID 1984, seeing past the lies of the two-party system, and then Israel, like being consistently calling out Zionism. Those were like three sort of starting points that we've went from. And so we invited about 15 or 20 people. And I mean, we would definitely love for you to be on some panels for sure. And the initial idea was just that, like, let's just do some panels where we've done a few of these before we officially launched the IMA. Myself and Whitney and James Corbett and a few others did some over the years about Elon and Trump. But we said, like, let's get more coordinated. Let's start having like regular panels with rotating guests and hosts about different topics, particularly focused on how this false binary of the two-party system, that both sides or alleged sides are pushing us further to technocracy, to surveillance, and just to more and more control and less freedom. So the idea is to do these panels for those in the group who are more like writers and do articles, to do collaborative investigations and things of that sort. And so we're actually partnering with the Odyssey platform. They reached out when we first announced it and basically said, I've used Odyssey for years, but now they're kind of launching a new phase, what they call the decentralized media ecosystem or something like that. And it's essentially just they want to create what they're calling the permaweb for journalists and for podcasts and content creators, for us to actually have a place that won't be censored, and also that's not funded by Peter Thiel and not connected to that whole apparatus, because they're very much like anti-Rumble and trying to, push back against some of that. They're seeing a lot of the same things we're seeing. So right now they're building us a website and a what they call a portal on their platform, which is blockchain based on Odyssey, which is supposed to be as close to censorship proof as we can get. And so that'll be coming out really soon. But in the meantime, we announced it, I think, in October of last year, 2024. And so we've had about 4 or 5 panels. There's going to be another one coming up pretty soon. We're going to do some New Year's Eve predictions. And yeah, I mean, it's James Corbett, Catherine Austin Fitz, Ryan Whitney, Charlie Robinson from Macroaggressions, Patrick Wood from Technocracy News. David Icke has agreed to be in some panels. He doesn't necessarily, he's like, I'm not a joiner, but he will be in some panels. And yeah, that was kind of the general idea, is like, let's look around and who still has their brains intact and who's been consistently calling this stuff out, and let's see if we can collaborate and work closer together. Because I think let's say the audience out there who's looking around, a lot of them are seeing the same things we're seeing. They're seeing like people who they thought they could trust start just pushing garbage and pushing Trump and pushing Musk, et cetera. And so we want to make sure that people know, not to say, hey, just trust us blindly, or, that we could never be wrong about anything, but to say, here are some people who've been around the block a couple times and have been consistent on the issues that we think that matter. Check out our work if you want to.
Cool. I thought it was just like a website where you all post videos and articles to. I didn't realize there was also going to be big panels, but that sounds cool to watch some of those, or maybe even be on one. Have you done any of those yet?
Yeah, we've done a couple of them. I've been on 1 or 2 of them. And like I said, we try to rotate. So we did one on digital IDs, specifically showing how both the left and the right are pushing for digital IDs in different ways. The right-wing conservatives, it's all about voter ID and stopping immigration and the digital virtual wall, and just trying to show that same element. We also did one on the election and a few other topics. I've been on a couple of them, and the next 2 we're planning is just kind of New Year's predictions for what's coming up in 2025, and then also a panel specifically looking at Syria and Israel and that whole geopolitical scene as well.
Tell us what's some of your predictions for 2025 and just Trump's term in general? Yeah,
I mean, I think that we're going to see these issues we're discussing get further acceptance in the mainstream. I mean, I wish I could say it different, and that there would be a true real awakening of people who are going to question these things. I think there still will be that faction, but by and large, it appears that whether it was all planned or just certain people are just jumping on the Trump train because they either really believe it or they're just following the money and following the trends, including the billionaires. I mean, you've got like Zuckerberg, right? Bezos, these people donating millions of dollars to Trump's inauguration. They basically, like with Bezos in the Washington Post, they chose not to endorse any candidate because it appears they didn't want to upset Trump, and so they just stayed out of it.
David Sachs is another big one.
David Sachs, yeah, all these different players from the big tech, industry. Sachs, he actually had a meeting in San Francisco last year. I think it was in May or June, and he was one of the first people to get some of the big tech people together, including Elon and Peter Thiel, and say like, we need to line up behind Trump. And they were reportedly at that meeting. They're the ones who told Trump to pick J.D. Vance. So that crowd has been lining up, and I think that we're going to see that progress in 2025, unfortunately. If
David Sachs is going to be the White House AI and crypto czar, and Howard Lutnick is going to be the Commerce Secretary, I believe, right? That's what it was, or Finance, one of those.
Secretary, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they're going to be in important positions. I mean, these aren't like they're just being given, random jobs at the White House. They're being in powerful positions where they can influence the industries that they already are involved in.
You mentioned in your Zionist Technocracy video somebody that had been pardoned that got a new ambassador or cabinet position as well. Do you remember who that was?
Yeah, this is actually an interesting one, there was some pushback, so maybe that could be a positive sign that it seems like some people maybe are too far, and then when they pick those people, they have to back off. There was this sheriff out of Florida, and he ended up getting nominated for the DEA, but then within a couple of days, he withdrew his nomination because there was a lot of heat, and pretty much his wife is part of this DeBartolo family, which is connected to the mafia, and her brother was, up to some shady business. He had been found guilty during Trump's first administration, and Trump pardoned him. And then their father was the big mafia guy going back. And so it just kind of shows you this different, Trump is I actually did an interview recently with this guy who does some great work. He's got a small channel, and it's all about history. And he's from Texas, where I'm originally from, and looking into the mafia families down there, particularly the Fertitta family and the Macios. They ran Galveston, which is southeast Houston, by the beach on the coast. And they ran Galveston, 100 years ago when it was mafia and prostitutes. And there's connections from that to Donald Trump via Dana White, who's of course connected to the UFC, and Joe Rogan. And it's funny because after we did that video, Trump announces Tillman Fertitta, who's the current billionaire living in Houston, who owns all these restaurants and the Rockets team and stuff like that he's appointed to ambassador to Italy. So I guess he can go back and see some of his old family from the mafia in Italy. And then also Trump appointed, so you got Fertitta got the Italy position, and then Dana White, who's from the UFC, just got put in some position as well. So I think he got put on the board of Meta now with Facebook. So all these people connected to UFC, going back to mafia, to Trump's days back in New York. It's a whole web of connections.
Ari Emanuel, the Hollywood super agent, owns the UFC and the WWE, and we see both at the RNC for Trump. Dana White and
Linda McMahon.
Linda McMahon got a cabinet position.
Yeah.
Right.
And another angle on that I don't think enough people dissected is that whole RNC was a Peter Thiel operation as well, with Emanuel and others in the background. Not only to mention the Novus Ordo Seclorum kind of in the whole background of their thing. Pretty nuts to see that. But also so besides the obvious J.D. Vance was there and his connections to Peter Thiel, and then Donald Trump and his connections to Peter Thiel, you had Hulk Hogan there, and Hulk Hogan has embraced Trump for quite a while. But the interesting thing about that,
and Jesus, he's basically Trump and Jesus. That's his new identity.
Yeah, now and America, right? So Trump, Jesus, and America. And but people might not remember that Hulk Hogan actually worked with Peter Thiel to sue Gawker to put them out of business. So there's just this web of connection that so many people that were at the RNC before Trump even won and before he even started picking his cabinet, Peter Thiel was there, even though he wasn't there physically. His presence was
okay. Ari Emanuel was Trump's agent in Hollywood. Ari Emanuel's the one that's washing down Elon in the infamous picture on the boat. Ari Emanuel was sitting right there next to him with the other Saudi financier at the UFC fight with Mike Johnson, the ultra Zionist Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, and Joe Rogan. UFC had Trump on for the huge interview. Did you see in that? Did you see the clip where Trump said, Joe, the prophets say the world will end in the Middle East. You know that, right? And they started talking about nuclear war.
Yeah, I made the mistake of watching that interview to see if there was anything that would be considered pushback or questioning, and it was just Joe slobbing on his knob for 3 hours, and didn't expect much. But that's the thing. Again, think about the power of that. Elon has X right before the election and can boost Trump just to the maximum degree. He goes on Rogan right before, and technocratic class, these people behind them, and of course we know these intelligence agencies have so much data on people, they are absolutely targeting that 18 to 35 demographic of young dudes, and they're doing it through Rogan, they're doing it through Tucker Carlson, they're doing it through Theo Vaughn, they're doing it through Alex Jones, and they're doing it through Elon Musk. Like, it's so obvious to me that this is a targeted operation to try to influence as many of the younger men as possible. Obviously,
hold on. Intellectual dark web. The two Weinstein brothers
Eric
also
Weinstein,
worked with
yeah.
Peter Thiel, and they're in with Rogan and Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro, and it's like a small club.
Have you ever gone down the rabbit hole of the Dark Enlightenment thing? Mencius Goldbug, his real name's Curtis Yarvin. Have you ever looked into him?
I've heard of the name, and I know he's involved with all this, but I haven't I don't know all the details about him.
You would find some really interesting things there. So, I mean, I'll just share briefly.
MAGA, intellectual dark web, Elon and Rogan.
So Curtis Yarvin, if you go back to the first Trump administration, there was some people reporting on him, and he had been writing in blogs like for years about what he called the neo-reactionaries. That's what the alt-right was first known when they were popping on the scene, and people were like, oh, the alt-right, the neo-reactionaries, the Dark Enlightenment. Eventually that has just become the MAGA Trump movement. But Steve Bannon he's quoted Curtis Yarvin numerous times early on saying that he was like the intellectual godfather behind the MAGA movement that he was bringing to Trump. And so I don't know what role he may play officially behind the scenes, because not too many people pay any attention to him. I'm pretty sure he's a hardcore Zionist as well. But his ideas are pretty much like the strong man needs to come in and take back power and, subvert everything else. And so to some degree, at least people influenced by Curtis Yarvin are in the Trump camp. And in those people also as well, I mean, you can go back to Peter Thiel, and I think it was David Sachs, actually, when they were at Stanford, they had their own magazine, Stanford Review, and they wrote about these ideas too. They were influenced by Curtis Yarvin as well. And so the idea that, again, technocracy, the technocrats should be able to run things and micromanage society, and you kind of get rid of democracy. And not
you mentioned Bannon, like Bannon and MAGA in 2016 was like Cambridge Analytica and like NSO group shit, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
See, man, I'm glad you mentioned that. I went back a couple weeks ago and was studying on Cambridge Analytica again, because I think that, I remember when it happened and paid attention then, but I really think perhaps we underestimated how big of a thing that was. The whistleblower coming out saying the company's using Facebook social media data to scrape that data for all kinds of things. I believe that, and of course they're not the only company doing it. They're just one that got leaked or whistleblown on. But I believe that that's how they can target us so efficiently, is because they've scraping all this data that we have given voluntarily, whether it's through social media or other more surreptitious means like with NSO group and spyware. And then think about this: if they wanted to create a sort of anti-establishment character that they know could piss off a certain group but also appeal to another group, they've got so much data and so much information on us and our psychological profiles that they could create that character out of thin air. That they could tell Elon what to say or Trump what to say or to tweet this at a certain time. Point your finger at this person, talk about this. And maybe it's not down to that specific level, not to say that they don't have any of their own autonomy or whatever, although I think they're both following orders. I think we would be foolish not to think that those operations have it down to like that level, where they literally have taken all the information people have been given social media for almost 30 years now, and they are using it against us.
Absolutely. Palantir is really into that stuff as well, right? The top guy there, they were bragging about like controlling and psyoping right-wing movements. There's this guy too, Benz. I'm forgetting his first name, something Benz, and he was involved. Mike Benz. He was involved with like trying to do some type of subversion with the alt-right, and is now some. I see him blowing up. I think he might have been on Rogan also. I'm
skeptical of him as well. I try not to just be skeptical of people for no reasons, but I posted this the other day that it's like my sort of blanket strategy is tend to be skeptical of anybody who is current or allegedly former intelligence contractor or employee or whatever else. And
I think the networks are pretty easy to identify. Like they make it very apparent.
Yeah, to me, there's a few ways you could look at it, right? On one hand, I have this, again, more kind of purist anarchist view of anybody who's promoting the two-party system. To me is somebody I'm not really going to give much credit to. But then going a little deeper, it's like, if you're still boosting Trump at this point, if you're boosting Elon, if you are not, so for example, I would call somebody out there. Luke Rukowski, of course, is somebody who needs to be called out fairly often, because, and I say that because I met Luke back, 2011. I was one of the people who was, like Alex Jones, inspired by watching some of his videos, him confronting politicians, went to New York City in 9/11, and I came to meet him and the other activists there, and I learned.
Now he's dining at Mar-a-Lago with Zionist Trump.
I came to learn that there was a different version of events with Luke on the ground compared to what you see on the internet. Anyways, nevertheless, Luke is at Mar-a-Lago. He does, his show is called The Best Political Talk Show, and he co-hosted with this woman that I don't know much about, Martha Bueno. Seems like a nice lady. But anyways, the other day, they both posted about being in Mar-a-Lago, and she posted this, what I consider to be a very simpy, pathetic, cringy kind of post of like, oh, look, I'm 3 rows away from the president, which is just like, I don't know. That's just, to hear a grown adult talk like that is just silly to me. But anyways, we went back and forth, and I basically kept telling her, I said, look, you are sitting there with Trump. Are you going to ask him about Peter Thiel's influence? Are you going to ask him about, this thing? And I kept bringing it up, and she literally just was addressing everything I was saying except for Peter Thiel. Every time I mentioned Peter Thiel, she would just skip right past it, to the point where literally the only thing I was like, do you know who Peter Thiel is? Are you going to talk about Peter Thiel? Are you and Luke going to talk about that on your show? And there's people like that to me that are clearly, obviously avoiding certain topics, either because they get access, they get to go to these fancy dinners, and they get to hang out at Mar-a-Lago. And she was kind of, her post was like, oh, I'm a daughter of a Cuban immigrant, and now I'm 3 rows away from the president. Anything's possible in America, kind of thing. And it's like, so
Tim Pool got his sit-down interview. He was taking Russian money too.
They don't want to question it, either because, like a lot of people, and this is literally the same thing, the corporate media, they want access. I've seen this on the local level to the national level. You go to press conferences, and none of the media will ask hard questions because they want to get invited to the galas and the dinners and the big fancy events. And if you're known as somebody who is going to be critical, your press pass is going to get taken. You're not going to get invited back, things like that. So now that their side is in power, they want access. They want either money. And I absolutely know that there are a lot of content creators out there who are financially motivated, and who realized around 2015, 2016, somewhere in that range, that now obviously talking shit about Trump can be profitable for some people, but I think in the quote unquote freedom movement, a lot of people realized, hey, if I just, ignore things about Trump and kiss his butt all the time, I get a lot more attention. I get a lot of supporters. I'm getting people coming my way, because the MAGA movement is just desperate to have their biases confirmed over and over and told how much of a hero Trump is. So it's actually a lot more detrimental to your career or your work to be critical of Trump. And you've heard the same things I've heard online. We're just being blackpilled. We're just being negative, et cetera, for calling these things out. And I think
you support Kamala Harris, they'll say.
Yeah. Oh, you think it would have been better under Kamala Harris? I think it's obvious who out there, like you said, it's not that hard to spot them and to see who is selling out, and who may have, maybe, whether that means like, hey, was Jones a long-term operation just to get to this point, build up a bunch of trust? I'm open-minded to that potential. And, people like Bill Cooper and others were warning about Jones. Or is it just, like I said, they just sold out over time because of money, because of whatever, who knows? Or they're being blackmailed. I mean, Jones, maybe Musk told him, hey, we'll bail you out of all your debt if you just, pump up us all day long and promote us no matter what. I'll get you out of that debt. I'll save InfoWars.
Exactly. When I had the brain fart earlier, I was mentioning your alliance, and I was saying I've seen some big viral clips with Whitney on these big platforms talking about Israeli tech and technocracy stuff. What do you think we're going to see the next few years? We got into some of these guys already, but like, what do people need to worry about the technocratic Zionist and their connections to Israeli tech when Trump gets in?
So I recently wrote 2 articles. One of them is about Trump's admin specifically. It's called Meet the Spyware Companies Preparing for Trump's Second Term. One of those, of course, is NSO Group. The vast majority of them, in fact, I think the number was 60% of the spyware companies are Israeli. NSO Group, I also wrote about another one that I don't think most people have heard of, called the Paragon Group. Those articles are at the Last American Vagabond. And I just wrote an article this past week that NSO Group actually, for the first time, was found guilty in court for hacking WhatsApp. Who knows what's going to happen, but it's that is the first first kind of time anywhere that they've actually been held accountable. And for those who don't know, they use what's known as spyware. So this doesn't even typically if somebody's going to hack your computer, they're going to send you a phishing link, some fake link through your email or your text, and you click it and you give them access to your device, your computer, or whatever. There's other ways to do that. There's called zero-click exploits. That's what they mainly use, where this is literally where they don't even need to get in your device. They can remotely hack into your, in this case, WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, Signal. They can absolutely hack Signal by getting directly into the servers. And so that's what this whole lawsuit was about. WhatsApp Meta was suing them, saying, hey, you gained illegal access to our servers.
Didn't they do that to WhatsApp too? They got busted doing that to WhatsApp too, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm talking about. So they've hacked like hundreds of thousands of people's WhatsApp accounts. And so I think we're going to see a lot of that get worse. As my article was talking about at TLab, you got Paragon Group, you got NSO, you got Cellebrite, you got companies that people are more familiar with like Clearview AI. All of these companies are getting big millions of dollars contracts with the Immigration Customs Enforcement, ICE, and the Border Patrol, preparing for Trump to come into office. Now, people who are concerned about illegal immigration, which is obviously like a real issue in some regards, they're cheering on the surveillance state because Trump's solution is a digital virtual border wall, as well as facial recognition cameras everywhere and a digital
ID. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So all those companies are preparing. So they're starting, like we've seen it since as soon as Trump got into office, ICE started preparing and assigning new contracts, like $21 million with Paragon Group and some other of these spyware companies, as well as the private prison industry is already like there was some phone calls that were released from their latest board meeting where the head of the Geo Group said that they're expecting like 400% profits under Trump because they're going to build the private prisons or the temporary prisons, which we used to call FEMA camps, that are going to house all these people that are going to be allegedly deported. And they're going to have these camps along the border to temporarily house them. So the private prison industry is like celebrating, like we're about to make a shitload of money. And not to mention that I think it's Pam Bondi, who Trump nominated to AG. She was a lobbyist for the Geo Group. So again, there's just more connections between the industries that are going to benefit under his term.
Yeah. She's another huge Zionist. She's who replaced Matt Gaetz, and she's a big Zionist too.
Exactly. So, I think we're going to see all those industries grow rapidly. The spyware companies, surveillance companies, they're going to get a big boost. The private prison industry is going to get a big boost. They're going to be making a shitload of money. And I do suspect that that's going to lead to less and less freedoms. Now, obviously,
they might even have another bird flu in a pandemic scare, and Trump will do Operation Warp Speed again, I bet you.
Oh my God.
Wouldn't he?
So that I've been thinking about that recently too, because I'm noticing, I try not to pay too much attention to the propaganda till it's like, okay, this is going to be something. Cause everybody, we've been hearing for a while, bird flu, there was Zika, but whatever the heck. But now they're claiming the first like bird flu death in the US and Louisiana or whatever. So who knows? And then you had Peter Hotez, that crazy man, saying that starting on January 20th, there's going to be a new, pandemic or something like that. Like he can literally time it to the day. So I wouldn't be surprised. But at the same time, I don't know. Maybe this goes back to what we were saying earlier about Trump being able to make moves that make him look good. Maybe, quote unquote, they do try, or the WHO declares a new pandemic and Trump says, no, we're not going to go for it this time, and actually does resist a little bit. And then that buys him a lot of goodwill and people, start following him further. More than likely, though, I think he would probably just go along with it and his supporters would make excuses again. But I don't think that that's completely out of the cards, too. And whatever the heck's going on with this drone thing, I don't know either. But 2025 is going to be a wild one for sure. I don't think it's going to be a good one for individual liberty or for privacy. So far, it's not looking that great.
Yeah. The American Golden Age that they're going to bring in. And right after the election, Elon tweeted "New Order of the Ages."
Yeah, like I don't see it's just a double standard, man. People who they're willing to accept certain things if it's quote unquote their team, but if the other team were to do it, they would flip their freaking wigs. And if Kamala Harris came into office and started talking about the North American Union, people would be rightfully losing their minds, but because it's Trump, they're willing to make excuses. And I think that's just, to me, it goes back to there's such a lack of principles. Whatever people's philosophical beliefs, you should probably get to know your principles and your values, whatever those are, because I think that's like maybe a bigger societal problem, is that people are just looking for hope. So they're going to keep being tricked and deceived over and over, whether they're religious or not. They believe that this guy is like a savior here to finally fix things. And it's just easier for people to believe that instead of actually trying to change their own lives or take care of themselves. They'd rather just like outsource that. And I get it. If you're just
to
like
a savior. People
Exactly.
are taught to depend on a savior.
And on one hand, I can empathize with it to a certain degree. Like I often use my family as an example, like my brother and my sister and her family, my brother-in-law, they're just like working class Americans working like 60 hours a week, not home that often, just trying to put food on the plate and pay the bills kind of thing. Right. Mm-hmm. And when they look around, they're like, well, the left has gone crazy. They're pushing transgenderism on my kids. They're doing this thing. They're supporting this. So I guess maybe Trump is the better option. And all you have to do is appear slightly less crappy and people will kind of go your direction. So I can kind of get why people would fall for it to that level. But unfortunately, usually that's where their responsibility ends. Maybe people went and voted in November, and then they're going to check out. They're not going to pay any attention again. So if Trump does all these horrible things, there's no repercussions. There's no responsibility. Like, hey, you guys elected this psycho. I don't know. I'm not saying anything should happen to them per se, but they definitely bear more accountability and responsibility than somebody like myself who chose not to participate.
Yeah, and opposed it. Yeah, we're going to blame them. We're going to blame all the Trump shills and apologists for what we're going to see in the next few years, the Zionist technocracy. Like in this article you wrote, or a video clip that's on your website, Conscious Resistance, you talk about how Trump has been marketed and portrayed and like groomed almost as this anti-establishment hero. And he's the savior that's going to save us from World War III and save Israel and save America and save Christianity and take out the deep state, right? Like in total savior. He's going like emperor mode now, coming in. There's never been like a messianic fervor or like a more culty political leader like than Trump, maybe ever. Elon's always on Twitter associating America and this new golden age of America with Rome. He's been doing it many times. I've shown examples of that. And Trump is like the new emperor of Rome, how he walks in to the Coliseum at the UFC fights and sits front row and all the fighters pay tribute to him. Is that not a perfect bread and circus example of what we're seeing play out? And that's the satanic New World Order, according to this, prophetic, all of these prophetic end times beliefs that like a European country is going to be this Edom superpower like the new Rome. With a rise in Christian anti-Semitism and Christian nationalism, and while Trump's the biggest Zionist and getting all the top Zionist awards, and they're calling him the Moshiach and stuff, the other side is calling him Hitler and a white supremacist and a Nazi. It's just it's the perfect storm for just total madness in the next 4 years.
Yeah, and the obviously religion is something that you focus on a lot more than I do. But as I talked to you before when we were recording for the Pyramid of Power, religion is something that I've questioned my entire life and had a difficulty with. I quote unquote grew up in the church, being forced to go to church as a young kid and as in junior high until I started to question things for myself. And as I did start to question, I started to look into it and ask like, hey, well, what about this other book? Or how come this thing? I was usually kicked out of Sunday school or told to have faith or whatever, these kind of things. So I absolutely have, understood the way religion can be used to control and manipulate people. And to your point, I think the closest thing that we have, which is honestly not anywhere near Trump, would be during the Bush years, where you start getting like the Eric Princes and others and talking about like the war on terror was a holy war, or that, they're soldiers for Christ. Yeah, exactly. Things like that. That was already kind of scary and crazy back then to witness that. But Bush didn't have nearly the amount of cult worship around him as Trump does. He definitely has his own. I've been to some of his rallies back in the day and seen how that they're pretty bad with it too. But
he was saved by God from two assassination attempts, right? He's ordained and saved and chosen to save the world. Trump says he was saved by God to save the world.
I think that really sealed the deal for a lot of people, man. And I absolutely do not trust those assassinations. I don't claim to know what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, but I don't believe any of it, as I think it was totally some sort of Hollywood scene. But I was going to say, this is I know that the religious element is a huge piece of the puzzle, and I don't think enough people are paying attention to it, which is why I'm glad that you do the work you do. And you mentioned it earlier, but that's also why I wanted to have you in the next episode of the Pyramid of Power. So I'll just mention about that if anybody wants to check out the Pyramid of Power. You can go to thepyramidofpower.net. There's all of the current 15 episodes. This is a 17-part documentary series that I've been working on since 2021, and I've been releasing episodes bit by bit at a time. And kind of the idea is that each episode gets deeper down the rabbit hole, so to speak, and further into the pyramid. And so we start with the education system, the media, basic things like that, and it gets deeper and deeper. And yeah, the most recent one was chapter 15 on the pedophilia issue and just how that ties into politics, culture, and obviously religion. And so the final piece of the pyramid is called Religion and Secret Societies. And that episode does feature you, Adam. It has also Mark Passio and then David Icke are in that as well. And in the final one, chapter 17, which will come out in March or April, is essentially everybody sharing their views on who or what is at the top of the pyramid, and you're going to be in that one as well. So the answers that we did before, you're going to be featured in the Religion and Secret Societies, and then on that final one. And I, like I said, I've spent a lot of my time over the years researching some of that, but when I was writing the script for that episode, and especially after our interview, it just took me further down the rabbit hole in the history of just how much religion is responsible for murder, for war, for violence, for deception, and just people's belief in those religions, specifically the Abrahamic religions, but also, I mean, there's stories of Buddhist extremists and other, religious extremists as well. Just allows them to justify all kinds of horrible things. And so it kind of brought me back to some of my roots of recognizing just the problems with religion.
Mm-hmm. That was the first time I've ever done some type of like recording for a documentary like that. How did it, and you're interviewing other guys, which I'm sure had some different takes than me. So how was the editing and production of that? Was it okay? Like, did it turn out okay? I'm kind of nervous about it.
No, it was great, man. I've only watched the first draft right now. My editor's working on the final version, and hopefully it'll be out in the next, we're hoping it's going to be out this month for sure. So hopefully the next week and a half. But yeah, I mean, there's times that what you say might conflict with David Icke and maybe even Mark, but I think I structured it in a way that it's not like, y'all each just have a different piece of the puzzle, I'll say, in that particular thing. I think the final episode, when we get to the point of everybody answering, hey, I think it's this group, I think it's this group. And you have people down to the kind of more, let's say, basic of it's the Bilderberg group, and then people saying, oh, no, it's the Zionists, it's the Freemasons, it's the Jesuits. I'm going to explore all these different things. And it's got Daniel Eshtelin, it's got a bunch of other researchers. I'm going to have G. Edward Griffin and James Corbett and other people sharing their thoughts on that. But definitely some of the things that you said are almost a rebuttal to some of the other opinions. So in the script, which I'm currently writing for the final episode, I kind of have you like responding to some of the people indirectly, or at least to their points. And I think it's going to be good because my goal is to present a wide range of perspectives. Obviously, I'm going to have my own research and my own thoughts on there. But I think it's important to explore all these different ideas and to go down those rabbit holes. And if people who've seen the series will know, this isn't an Alex Jones InfoWars documentary. There's no speculation. There's no hyperbole. Everything is listed in my transcript with links to every documentation of every single topic that I'm discussing. So actually, these final episodes are really going to be the first points where we start having to introduce a little bit more speculation, because obviously at the end of the day, I don't think any of us can say for certain, like, here's the document that shows, okay, it's the Zionist and it's this thing, everybody's got
the Bible.
theories.
We do. We have the document. It's the Bible.
Why the Bible? Right? But you know what I mean? So I'm going into that of presenting, this is what Adam believes. This is what Mark Passio believes. Here's what David Icke believes. Here's what Daniel Eshtelin believes. Here's what G. Edward Griffin believes. And
what does Eshtelin believe? It's Bilderberg? The Bilderberg round tables are the very top of everything?
Something like that, but I think more specifically, he talks about what is the phrase? The Venetian black nobility, and so kind of going back to Venice and these founding families, and him and a few other people point to a list of European royalty families, not the Rothschilds, but people that have, in his research, he says that if you actually check the land holding records in Europe, these are the families that actually own all the land, but they're not names that we would recognize because they've stayed behind the scenes for some time. Now, as far as whether they're Jewish or whether they're Jesuits, I haven't looked into that specifically.
That narrative is plays into the Kabbalist narrative that Rome and Europeans are who are the descendants of Rome, are running everything, and going to have this global Zionist New World Order, satanic Antichrist, like New World Order, like Alex Jones. And who's the guy we mentioned earlier today that wrote the Fourth Reich? Jim Mars, the Fourth Reich. So the Nazis are secretly running everything. It's these shadowy Nazi Europeans. It's the secret Roman cabal in the Catholic Vatican Church. That's all plays right into the anti-Edom Kabbalistic agenda.
Yeah, I don't know if Jim, this is the Rise of the Fourth Reich. I don't know if he ever, I haven't read it in a while, if he ever goes deeper, but you're correct there in the sense that his essential argument was that, post 9/11, post World War II, Operation Paperclip, Project Paperclip, et cetera, that they're still in power, which I think to some degree has elements, not literally like the Nazis, Hitler, but in terms of like, fascists and like, now there's maybe more descriptive terms, but I definitely think the Zionists could be described as the new Nazis in some degree.
Well, it's interesting that, because I've Estelin, that's what Alex Jones has said forever too, basically. It's the secret Nazis and the royals and the Venetian bloodlines and all those things, and that's just like the perfect narrative that plays into what I think is ultimately behind it all. So that's interesting how it fits in. I can't wait to see it. I hope it turns out awesome, and I'll probably I don't know. Can I repost it on mine if it's awesome? Can I repost it? Okay,
everybody. Cool. So besides the website, you can see on the website right there at the top is a link to the Odyssey channel. Mm-hmm. We have the Odyssey channel that just has all those. I recommend and welcome people to download, rip it, upload it anywhere. I mean, the cool thing for me is this has been like a lifelong, it's like me revisiting a lot of my old research to kind of see how I feel about things that I sort of woke up to in the beginning. And, sometimes when you first waking up, you might go down certain rabbit holes or follow certain people that then later you're like, yeah, that wasn't as exactly accurate as I thought it was. So it's cool for me to kind of revisit that old research. But my bigger goal, obviously, is to make this accessible to people. So every episode, except for maybe 4 or 5 of them, are 30 minutes or less. And the idea was to I have my own original research, but I also reference a bunch of other books and documentaries. So the idea is if somebody's already got like the best work on that, I'm going to reference that and encourage people to look into those things. So every episode ends with some suggested solutions. Every episode ends with, if you want to learn more, read these books, watch these documentaries, and it's supposed to be bingeable. So that's the idea. Once we're done in a couple months, like we're going to do USB drives, DVDs, etc. And I've had people tell me that they've used it to homeschool their kids, that they've got friends who won't normally watch, quote unquote conspiracy videos to watch it because of the style that it's in. I approached it more, again, not as a conspiracy documentary, but as a kind of true crime. Like, these are facts. This is real stuff. Like, let's investigate it and give it the respect that it deserves. And that's kind of was always my problem with Alex Jones too, is that like Jones would take information, but then just completely obliterate it. He goes on Joe Rogan, gets the opportunity to say some like really important things and would just butcher all kinds of info, and maybe on purpose, who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. I see one of the titles that you had here is, what was it? Prison industrial complex. I think I tweeted out, I coined a new term maybe today. I said the Moshiach industrial complex, or the Jesus industrial complex, you could also call it, or societal complex. But it is an industry, the Jesus industry. You see Jones push it, Trump, obviously, Tucker Carlson, everybody, Rumble. It's like fully Christian. I was going to mention Trump, obviously. Russell Brand, Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, they're all pushing the Jesus line, which gets everybody believing in the Judeo Matrix, which is like instrumental for Israel and their end times plans, basically.
Yeah, I don't buy any of these conversions. I don't buy this like, Jordan Peterson, Brand, et cetera, that they're all becoming Catholic or Christian or whatever. Mm-hmm. I have, everybody's free to believe whatever the heck they want, but I have huge skepticism that all of a sudden these different people and movements are just waking up. I do think it's just part of, again, that great inversion. Because what was Russell Brand, like some like liberal left wing, party womanizer, etc. Not to say people can't change, but then to like go to the polar opposite, and now he's a Christian, being having baptism and all this sort of stuff. And there's also to kind of we mentioned a little bit of this earlier. People need to look into some of these companies and these sponsors, and the wellness company is one of them. The Eric Prince phone. There's another one that Brand is associated with. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but it has connections to Zionist.
Halo app, the Halo app, and
exactly.
associated with the guy that does the Chosen Jesus popular series.
Yeah, so look out for these kinds of, not to say, like, again, like make your money. Like I work with some local companies that I know that are friends of mine, but people need to look into when you start seeing the same quote unquote influencers or big accounts, which all have similar funding or working with the same people, boosting the same messages across the platform. Sometimes it's just simple, like, okay, people share the same opinion, because I've had people try to say these conspiracies about myself as well, and say that me and Whitney Webb and Ryan, whatever, we're a coordinate. It was funny because they were saying the same thing. They were claiming we were coordinating to try to discourage people from voting. Don't listen to them. They're trying to stop the Trump movement. It's like we're being funded by regular people, or what different things like that, but nobody's getting paid by Elon Musk or working with the wellness company or Eric Prince or anything like that. So people need to be skeptical for sure when they see these messages and being boosted, these narratives. This is narrative shaping, and this is done on purpose, absolutely 100%. And I don't think Twitter is going to get any easier to navigate about it. I think it's going to get more and more difficult. So for people who aren't on there, maybe you don't need to be on there. I mean, if you want to, great, but I don't think that you're missing out on much. It really is like a battlefield in there for your mind. There's all kinds of things trying to pull your attention this way or get you to argue and fight.
The flat Earth mental illness.
Flat Earth seems to be boosted on there as well. I mean, there's a number of different things that, again, I think everybody should have the freedom to say whatever the heck they want, believe whatever they want. But it's clear that there are certain narratives being boosted, and for sure, anything that favors Elon and Trump, et cetera, is being boosted.
You talked about Eric Prince. He's associated with the Council for National Policy. You've heard of them, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, that's another one that a lot of people ignore.
Yeah, like Corsi and Bannon and I think Flynn, a bunch of these names, Charlie Kirk, many of these characters, the who's who of these things associated with them. And it was founded by Tim LaHaye, the Left Behind Rapture guy that was making documentaries 20 years ago with Netanyahu about end times prophecies.
It's what they want to happen, man. I mean, you've probably outlined that better than most, that there's clearly an effort to push us in that direction. I mean, and as somebody who isn't religious, but has like a mother who considers herself a Christian.
Me too. My mom's Christian too. Still crazy.
Thankfully, my mom is like the kind of Christian that, which I think is slightly better probably, where she just considers herself like, I just have my own personal relationship with God and Jesus. She doesn't like follow the big pastors or keep up with, Christian social media or whatever. Yeah. And she's not politically informed, so they're not really kind of following too much. But still, I'll be at my mom's house when I'm visiting her, and she'll have her little church TV on in the background, and they'll start just with this strong Israel propaganda. I mean, it's constant. It's like, we got to stand by the state of Israel. And I'll sometimes, like, to as kind degree as I can, interrupt and tell her, like, Mom, you hear what they just said right there? They're trying to get you to support this thing and that thing, and point out to her. But I can see how it's they've got such a hold on regular Christians, even people who aren't super political, who want to believe that those myths are going to come true, and they will do whatever they can to support it or to promote it. And if they think Trump is going to help that happen, well, then a lot of people are willing to line up behind him and let him do what needs to be done. If that means, the prophecies of the Bible are going to come true and Jesus is coming back.
Right. It's just also ridiculous and absurd. You've done a lot of work on fluoride. What do you think about RFK's promise to take fluoride out of the water? You think that's another campaign lie, or we're going to see some action on that?
Well, I think those are both true. I think it is probably a campaign lie, whether he believes it or not. But I also think there is going to be action. And I have that on good authority, because I have been reporting on fluoride, the fluoride trial, the fluoride lawsuit since 2020, and I was there in San Francisco last year whenever the trial was happening. The judge, obviously, he ruled against the EPA and said that fluoride is a neurotoxin. And then we had a giant government study come out saying the same thing. So that was all happening before RFK even got involved. And in fact, some of the people within the fluoride movement, fluoride-free movement, as it's sometimes known, they're actually opposed to Trump and RFK kind of championing the cause because they say it's actually dividing their movement. And some people are like, they don't want Trump associated with their movement, so to speak, or they think they might actually hurt their chances. At the same time, I also know from some other sources that RFK has specifically asked some of the people in the fluoride community, some of the kind of lead researchers, to help him develop an executive order on fluoride. I don't know if Trump's actually going to do that, but at the end of the day, the federal government only has so much power. The federal government doesn't mandate fluoride on local cities and towns. It's actually at the local government.
All he promised actually was that he would recommend it from the federal level.
And that obviously could have some impact, but yeah, at the end of the day, he can't stop it. What he could do is just come in office and say, okay, well, under the Trump administration, the CDC no longer recommends fluoridating your water, or they could lower the recommendation or something, but it would still be down to the local bodies. Now, that's not to say that isn't a positive step, but ultimately, again, I'm not going to fall for I wasn't going to go vote for Trump because I believed in the Maha movement or whatever. I give credit to the people like the Fluoride Action Network and the Connett family who've been fighting for this movement for 25 years. Those are the people who I think really deserve the credit for whatever happens next, not Trump coming in at the last minute and swooping in RFK and saying they're going to save the day. I think that's just another way for them to try to gain credit.
They'll come in and either gain credit or limited hangout it probably.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm skeptical about that. But, again, I do think positive things are coming in the fluoride fight.
It could be an easy win that they give us we back them more. It could be. Real quick, what are these trials you said in San Francisco about fluoride? Can you explain what those are?
Yeah, so in 2016, the Fluoride Action Network, they sued the EP. Well, first they filed a petition under this law called the Toxic Substance Control Act, or TSCA. And TSCA was the first U.S. Law that passed in the mid-2000s that allowed regular people like us to file a petition with the EPA. And basically you could say, hey, I have proof that this chemical, this substance, whatever, is hazardous to human health. And so the Fluoride Action Network, they filed a petition with the EPA under TSCA and said, here's all these studies showing fluoride is harmful to the human brain, to the kidney, these other areas. The EPA denied the petition and said, no, we're going to ignore you. Everything's fine. So they sued the EPA and federal court. That was back in 2016. The trial, it actually finally went to court in the summer of 2020, right in the middle of COVID, but it was all virtual. I was reporting on the trial then, doing live tweeting and doing articles for The Last American Vagabond. And basically, at the end of summer 2020, the judge then said, let's put it on hold right now. There were some new studies that were supposed to come out, and it took 4 years for those studies to come out. And so the trial didn't resume till February of 2024. And then there was a 2-week trial about that. And at that trial, people can find all this on my website if you go to the water fluoridation category. I interviewed Dr. Bruce Lanphier, Dr. Howard Hu, Dr. Philippe Grandjean, and Michael Connett, who's the lead attorney. And these are the experts who helped the government even develop their own toxicity standards for lead and for mercury, who are now saying we're dealing with a similar danger from fluoride. And so, yeah, I was the only journalist there in the room for 2 weeks straight in San Francisco reporting on these trials.
Unbelievable. Only one there. I got you for another 5 minutes, and I got 2 big topics I want you just to summarize for me. What you think's going on with Trump and Iran? They're saying they're gonna assassinate them, or they're behind the drones, or they're hacking his campaign. What do you think is gonna happen with Trump and Iran? And if you could explain a little deeper, I think you know more than me about Palantir. I haven't researched it, all the details super deep. I just know the basic level stuff. What do we have to worry about most with Palantir? The most important thing people to know about Palantir?
Sure. So the whole Iran thing, I definitely think that there's just propaganda coming out. What was all of a sudden they're like, oh, we think Iran was somehow connected to the Trump assassination, and that never got proved, but they sort of planted that seed.
Netanyahu said it when he came and addressed Congress even.
Yeah, exactly. So they're trying to plant that seed in people's minds. And then also I mentioned that Sean Ryan dude earlier, who's like former CI or something. He apparently did a show, like, I don't know, like I said, I never heard of this guy till recently, but I started digging into his work. And he's one of these people propagating this propaganda, where he did some interview with some alleged whistleblower claiming that because of the open border, Iran snuck in 2 nukes through, with suitcases, and now they're lost. Like, I don't know, I guess that's possible, but I think that it's more likely that somebody with connections to the intelligence agency is helping carry water for state propaganda that they would like people to believe, so they could continue to further go into the Middle East. I mean, obviously they just got Assad out of there and put someone else in power that's a little bit more favorable to Israel. Israel was able to go in and reclaim some more land. And they clearly want to get Iran out of there, or take over Iran and change the leadership. So I definitely
get
think
some puppet leadership in, probably.
Exactly. And I mean, and you also, like, what's his name? JD Vance was saying, before the election, that we need to hit Iran, we need to hit them hard. And then Trump was running campaign ads saying that, like, if Iran dares spill a drop of blood, we're going to hit them back and bomb them to protect Israel. So it's clear that the neocons,
they're talking about targeting their nuclear sites too already.
Yeah, exactly. I saw that too. So to me, that's just more of the same, like, pro-war propaganda, and they deceived a lot of people by this whole idea that Trump is a pro-peace president, when anything, if you actually look at his first term, it's actually not true at all. And into the other question on Palantir, I think the main thing to learn with Palantir, well, there's a couple of things. So for one, Peter Thiel, again, is the co-founder, along with this other guy named Alex Karp. And Alex Karp is also a steering committee member of the Bilderberg Group. So you got 2 of the founders of this company, both on the steering committee of the Bilderberg Group. And Palantir actually comes from Lord of the Rings. It's like their all-seeing orb thing. So they like to name their stuff after Lord of the Rings. There's a few different companies they have with references to Lord of the Rings. But I think the big takeaway is that it's a private intelligence firm. It's a private surveillance firm. And what that allows, and this is, I think, part of the technocracy. This is why Elon is coming into picture, Peter Thiel, that and the co-opting of the Bitcoin community and all that stuff. Like, for example, they might not roll out
Black Cube. We haven't heard about Black Cube in the news much lately, right? But that means whatever they're doing is staying underground, and but they're up to something,
hide themselves, but I'm sure we'll hear from them soon. But so just as one example, the CBDC thing, Trump claimed that he's, there's not going to be any CBDCs under him. And that may be true. Perhaps he won't roll out something that is literally called a central bank digital currency. But as myself and Whitney Webb and her writing partner, Mark Godwin, have shown, Trump and his infiltration and working with the Bitcoin community, they're actually going to roll out surveillance money in terms of stable coins. So it might be like Tether or USDC or even Bitcoin itself. Yeah, technically it's not going to be a CBDC, but you're still going to get to the point of trackable, traceable money that they can manipulate. I think that's the same tactic they're taking with surveillance, because when they used firms like Palantir, since these aren't private government agencies, you can't file a FOIA request. You can't file, there's no government accountability, even if you believe that still exists. These are private firms that are partnered with the government in many cases, because they're so tight. And so we as the people have no access to that data, no access to that information. There's like very little stopping them from doing whatever they want. And honestly, to go back just real briefly to the spyware topic, for people who don't know more about this, I encourage you to download or rip or find it free wherever you can. There's a documentary that just came out called Surveilled. It's an HBO documentary, but it's actually pretty good. Like I said, don't give HBO your money. You can find it out there. It's not like super conspiratorial, but it's a more basic level. But even at this basic level, when you understand how big the spyware industry is, and Palantir and these other companies, I mean, I think we're probably screwed. Like they have so much access to every digital device that is surrounding us. They don't even have to physically be near it. They can, get it 10 different ways, and there's really nothing we could do. And it's really a dangerous place that we're moving into. So, I mean, I definitely do have fears of how companies like Palantir are going to become increasingly strong under the second Trump term.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these quasi-government front groups with like revolving doors and started by InQtel and stuff, or Hasbro, Unit 8200, Talpiot grads and stuff. It reminds me, like, they're planting bombs and pagers for Hezbollah. You don't think that they've got backdoors and spying and surveillance on everything? They got their Stingray, their Promise software. How about the Mossad guy on 60 Minutes saying that, like, as they're bragging about the pager operation, that they're the script writers and the main characters, and they're producing the movie and the theater of life. Like,
That's crazy, man. That was a nuts admission. But I mean, I guess they feel comfortable just putting it all out in the open now. I mean, that's kind of where things seem to be. I'll also mention this just for anybody who is interested in the Pyramid of Power. I think one of our best episodes we produced, which is the longest one, is the crimes of the intelligence community. And that talks about Talpia, Unit 81, Unit 8200. I focus on the Israeli, the Chinese, the Russian, and the American intelligence agencies. That's in season 3. People can find that. I think it's chapter 12. So yeah, if you want to learn more about that, that's like a whole deep rabbit hole there.
Mm-hmm. And another important thought that came to mind, we were mentioning all the people leaving InfoWars. How about Millie Weaver leaving InfoWars right after her Shadowgate documentary, where she talks about, like, General Jones connected to Roger Stone and doing these, like, internet activities and propaganda stuff? That's another important piece of the puzzle.
I forgot all about that, man. There's so much crap that happens.
I know, seriously.
I remember that one, though.
Right, and then she left after that. She basically got fired after she did that documentary that Jones funded. Isn't that wild?
Yeah, it's definitely, InfoWars is not a place to go if you're looking for a long-term career, if you have any principles. I think that's clear now. I got to bounce in just a moment, brother.
Cool. Yeah, no, hour and a half. Thank you so much for your time, everybody. Follow him on Twitter, Conscious Resistance, and thepyramidofpower.net. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man.
Derrick, great talk. We'll have to do it again when Trump gets in and all hell starts on break loose. Sound good?
Sounds good, brother. Happy to come back, and I'll get you on one of the independent media panels too.
Cool, that'd be cool. If you want me to. No, I won't talk about Jesus the whole time. I could talk about this type of stuff. No religion. Oh, we did talk a lot about religion, actually. Never mind. I can never not. But all right. Thanks for the time, bro. Keep up the good work.
Appreciate you, man.
All right. So that was cool. I'll read these super chats here and then close it out. Oh, wait. There he goes. That was cool. Good talk. Can't wait to see his how I get edited into his new documentary installment. So we got Boleslaw for 25 says, long live Kamala. Yeah, long live King Joe. Thank you, Boleslaw. That's funny. John Garadas for 20 says, let's start a shekel train. And nobody joined the train. Nobody wanted to support today for exposing all the Peter Thiel, Trump, Rogan, InfoWars, Christian Zionist technocratic shills. Nobody cares about the Zionist technocracy that's about to unfold that we all said was coming. It's all unfolding. Donald J. Trump says, here are some shekels to support your fight with Elon scum. Let's see. Dr. Terry says, I don't know what you talking about, Adam. Okay, I shouldn't even read that because I don't even know what that one token thing is. Let's see here. What does that say? Derrick is a good guy. I always enjoyed his work. Me too. I haven't watched everything he's ever done, but like I've never been like, oh, how dare he say that, and that he's a shill. That's stupid. I've always seen him be pretty on it. Let's see here. And I was watching him before I even started a channel. I was watching him and Luke, I think, and Adam versus the Man, maybe it was, doing interviews and activism and stuff. So he is an OG and has done some had some legendary epic moments and certainly gets it way better than almost everybody. So oh, that's right. His debate with I wanted to mention he had a great debate with Ian Carroll, who popped up and blew up and is like a Trump apologist, basically. I wanted to talk to him about that. That was the other main thing. It was like the number one main thing I wanted to bring up with him, and I forgot to. So thank you, Prison Palace, for mentioning Ian Carroll there. I need to see it too. I hadn't seen the whole thing yet, but I imagine how it went down. I saw a clip of it, I think. All right. Garrett Masterpiece McCluskey says, you demand. Thank you. Thank you. We've got another big one in here somewhere, too. Guess my kvetching work. If it would load properly. Where is it? Get out of California. No, I'm not getting hit by the fires. Yes. Base maternal rage. Thank you. The sugar mamas are the only one that want to support today, apparently. Just kidding. Big Mama. Where are you, Big Mama? Base maternal rage says, good guest. Thank you, Adam. He is a good guest. Good time talking with him. Could talk to him for hours. Need More Amalek says, Palantir has a spreadsheet somewhere with all the anti-Semites listed and their scores of how anti-Semitic they are. I hope my place on the leaderboard is high. I mean, if are they judging by real criticisms or kooky distraction conspiracy? It depends on how they judge you. Does not limit use. All right. Can't wait to see what you guys have to say in the comments. What is today? Thursday. I may do a show Friday or Sunday, if not for sure on Monday. Well, depending on what happens. What is that? Depends on what happens in the news. We'll do a news show or the whole special about Germans, the anti-Christian Germany. So, thank you guys. Hope you enjoyed the show. Can't wait to see what you have in the comments. Appreciate everybody for the support. Always, the best way you can help is to clip the show, create accounts, share the links, educate yourselves to educate others. And I will be back very soon. You guys have a nice weekend. Take care.